I'm hoping you were able to build at least a few of the labels. I'll tell you now, I'm not going to build out this whole thing. You have a mimic that did that for the basics one, but I'm going to give you all the different pieces and let you kind of build out from there. So the next big challenge we have is this whole like date entry field and how we can manage that. Now we absolutely could manage it by having a whole bunch of grids inside of here, and then have each one placed on its own and spanning, and that can become very, very complicated in a hurry. I mean, the three column approach works. We have things in the middle, things on the left justified, things right and that's justified. Very common approach for graphical user interfaces. So we're gonna you kind of stick with that for now. But how do I get two items in the same space? Well, it's actually not too bad once I get going on that. I'm gonna leave my background purple just because it makes me happy. We can take that out at any point. So what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a frame. Sorry, balance some cough here. So I'm going to call it the date frame because that's what I'm entering here. The date doesn't really matter what the name is. These variables are all temporary when they're not saved to the class itself. But the date frame here is a frame. So a frame is kind of like what it would sound if you put it on the wall. It's something you put other stuff into to hang it up and display it. So the frame, the only thing I really care about is telling it, well, what window are you on? Well, so the frame's going to go in that window. And that actually makes my life a little bit easier because then, I can just deal with the date frame from there. And so let me actually just go ahead and put the date frame where it belongs. Sorry, put it on the grid. And so let's see, it's going to be on the first row, the third column. So it's first row, that's the second row technically, row one. So row is going to be equal to one, and column is going to be equal to two, the third column. And you know what? Let's go ahead and make this sticky east as well because we want it to be right justified. Now, if I run this, let's see what happens. Nothing. Why? I'm editing the frame. I have an invisible item that's just kind of hanging out right here. I didn't set a different color, so it has no color. So there's nothing in it as well. Frames are they're conceptual pieces that put stuff together, but they don't actually take on size, shape, or contents until I put something inside the frame. All right. So what's going to go inside of my frame? Well, we can see it off to the side here. We have a label and a text box. Let's start with the label. We know how to do that. The label is equal to a label, and it's going now in the date frame, right? And then the text is going to be date. That should be good enough, right? I think that. I mean, we'll give it a shot. But we need to say date label dot grid. Do we need to tell it? Like, do we need to specify rows and columns for the grid on this one? Um, Not necessarily, actually, right? There's actually a better way to do it. Let me run this and show you. We'll come back to it in a second. But yeah, there now our date's shown up. And now you can see there's something inside of there. Our frame is now taken on because of the contents inside of it. It's now not purple showing up. It's the gray background showing up, or whitish gray, off white, whatever it is. We'll come back to this grid here in a second. So the other thing we need to go inside of here is a text box. Now, the text box is definitely something we need to interact with later on. Whatever the user types inside of there, when they hit the button, I need to go to this text box and say, well, what date did they put inside of here? So I'm going to make the text box be part of the object itself. So instead of a local variable, part of the constructor that gets thrown away because I never need to interact with it again, I'm going to say, well, this is going to be, the text box is going to be, well, self dot date input. I mean, I could say date text box or something like that, but let's just say I have a fancy date entries tool I use later on. Well, it's just inputting the date. That's why I'm okay with just calling it date input here. And so then this needs to be a text box. So what is a text box? Again, in some languages it's called a text box or a text field or a text area or whatever it's going to be. Here it's an entry. All right, and so the entry again goes into the date frame, and my cat just decided to sit right in front of where I'm typing. And then the other option I can put inside of here is how wide it's going to be. Now, let me do it without the width for a second and see what happens. See, there's no, it didn't actually, oh, well, I didn't actually add it in. That's my other thing. So I can't just do that. I have to add something in. I can say self dot date input dot grid here, and that should add it in. Ah, yes. So we'll notice there's my text box. I can put things inside of it, but it's below it and it's really, really wide. And now that makes my button, my label really, really wide. So again, I can inside of my, sorry, I got to move this because my cat, as I said, this thing right in front of it. Oh, no, she's moving. I can make this the width of whatever I want it to be. And so if you think about it, this is the number of characters I'm going to be able to type in. So I want day slash month slash and 4 characters for year, so 10. That's how many characters I plan on typing in. So that is a nice way to be able to set the text size inside of there. So let me do this again. Okay, well, so now it's not quite as wide, but again, it's still top to bottom. That's not really what I wanted. So I either need to set grid of 0, 0, 0, 1, or there's actually another mechanism here. Again, this is something that you learn about by doing tutorials. This is something you learn about by doing some Googling. Here, this is kind of the tutorial. I'm just not a big fan of reading this stuff all out, just kind of looking at the exercise and whatnot. But there's this idea called pack. So pack is just saying, add this to this frame, this window, whatever it is, and there's, it'll do the same thing right here, right? Well, pack just kind of jams it in, but remember, this is being jammed in the left-hand side. This has all the weight, so this is putting them top to bottom here, right up next to each other. So we can pack it without having to be able to specify that with a little bit of some extra information. So the pack works by saying, okay, well, what side do I want that to be? So I'm going to make this the left side, right? I can pack left to right here. And again, I can say pack this one, the side is going to be left. Oops. Aha! So now I've put those side to side. Again, the grid would be perfectly fine here. I just wanted to show you the other option. There's not a wrong way to put this together. I want to show the other option. Again, the purple, once that goes away, this will all start to look like the check. But this, hopefully you can now see how it's starting to come together. First row has the 3 items because this is the new lines. And then the next row, it's hard to see a little bit, but it starts right below that one and it puts this item. Now, if you want to be picky, and there's nothing wrong with that in your displays, it's a little bit annoying that this text box butts up against the side of the display, right? And by the way, it doesn't limit it to 10 characters, it just displays characters. So you can see it displays 10 characters, but doesn't limit it to 10 characters, but it's right up against the side of the display. So if you want to clean that up a little bit, if you really are a stylized designer and you want it to be good, there's always options of this. And again, you can Google it, but I'm just going to show it to you. I can do a padding on that, and I can do